Salvete, liberos meos. Ubisoft pulled a small number on me around 4 weeks back when they released the teaser for Anno, Pax Romana. Yeah, I'm gonna pronounce it in German because I learned Latin in German school, so sue me. And the night before, I was discussing possible future iterations of Anno with a friend of mine, and we had so many ideas, and obviously Roman times was one of them. To be confirmed in our suspicions this quickly really wasn't something I expected, and when I was watching some YouTube videos with my girlfriend, I was irritated by this thumbnail in a Roman design with this bearded guy, and holy shit, that's posted on Ubisoft's official account! Anyways, before I saw that, I thought about doing a quick video outlining my wishes and expectations for the next game, but that's kinda pointless now. Still, there are some aspects of the new Anno that I have opinions on and wishes for. So while we take a look at what's to come, I will throw in some of my personal tidbits as well. So here we are, 4 weeks later, patiently waiting, and Ubisoft has actually given us a bit of information on the new Anno in the form of screenshots and promotional video with our bearded governor or whatever answering some feedback given by parts of the community. But let's work in my personal chronological order, starting from the day I first saw the teaser trailer. The setting was quite obvious from the thumbnail already, and I have to say, I like it. My most important criterion was met. It had to be in the past. And while I have to say that 117 AD is a bit too far in the past for what I would have wished for, it's a complaint on a whole different level. I am super happy we're in a European setting, a past setting, and while there are some aspects of that which could prove difficult, more on that later, I'm excited for what the devs have in store for us. The video's title, Governors Wanted, sure makes it seem like there's a big focus on exploring new frontiers. I mean, Anno has always been about that, but reaching new areas like the Arctic or in Besa was met with a sort of casualness which might be fitting for the time it was set in. I mean, even the British Empire, for example, met its prime and inevitable downfall not too long after Anno 1800. Judging by some of the inventions and technology, the game probably peaks in the early 20th century in terms of time. But Roman times, ooh, there are areas to explore. And while I try not to read too much into teasers and trailers these days, there's one scene where our bearded friend stands in a bog annoyed by a mosquito, and the color palette changes quite a lot in that scene and makes it look colder and wetter. So maybe, just maybe, we're not only in the Mediterranean? And that's when I looked at the product page for 117. There are more or less 3 important pictures on it. For me, this one is the most interesting. My first thought was, oh no, a fixed map. Having a newly mixed, relatively unique map every time I start Anno is one of the key features for me. It keeps the game fresh and challenges new. I mean, why would they release a map that, by the way, is obviously inspired by Europe and Northern Africa, when it is not the map, the only map? But Moritz, the same friend who I discussed possible future Annos with, pointed out that this may be the big, overarching map that we know from 1800 as well, and that the golden specks are actually where our islands or pieces of land actually are. And given that the names Latium and Albion, which are the areas surrounding Rome and England respectively, have been mentioned, it seems that this is the right call. It would make sense, even from a company perspective, as they can organize their DLC around different places in Europe, just like they did in 1800. Just imagine the possibilities. The 117 map actually shows the fictionalized version of the outreach of the Roman Empire in greyish white. This map from Wikipedia shows the real borders in the year 125, only 8 years later. It fits quite well. So, what I would like to see and what's possibly in the game aligns quite well. The option, if through DLC, to settle in many different parts of the Roman Empire, from the base game area of today's England over Morocco to Turkey or Egypt or actually my hometown. I'm from a small German town called Xanten, where roughly 2000 years ago there was a Roman colonia, a city, the Colonia Ulpia Traiana. Today it's a huge open-air museum and the Roman history is visible and discussed all over town. It would be so much fun to settle in the general area near the Rhine and trade with or fight of my Germanic great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. The next pictures I want to talk about are these two. Now, there's no more denying it, this game will at least partly be set in Britain or on the British Isles. I'm not good enough of an anthropologist to give some profound insight. Actually, I'm no anthropologist at all, so all I can do is speculate. But while I think that these huts with thatched roofs and the colder color palette and the clothing of the people might be enough of a hint that this is Britain, Stonehenge is in the background. Combined with the whole Latium Albion thing, that's set, at least for the base game. On the Roman side of things, we see the Colosseum, or at least something similar, and there's a temple in the background that reminds me a bit of the Acropolis, but don't they all look quite similar, to be honest? But ooh, what's that? Is that Mount Vesuvius? Are we getting volcanoes back? I don't have too much to complain about in Anno 1800, but one thing I really missed were natural disasters. Yeah, I know, the advent of technology brought different struggles and societal impacts with it, but I would have actually paid to see my city get flattened by a volcano. But with this, I beg you, Ubisoft, for this not to be nothing more than a promotional gag. I mean, the Mediterranean is full of volcanic activity and earthquakes, and there's this small little pond called the Mediterranean Sea, which also holds many secrets and can conjure up big storms with its bigger brother from the west. So please, give me some struggles. I bet there's a lot more to be seen and interpret into these pictures, like the oxen, possibly a means of transport, the lavender maybe, the marshlands and so on, the two-colored temple, but yeah, I talked about all the stuff that's most important to me, so that should suffice. Now, 2 weeks ago, Ubisoft published another video with our bearded Roman addressing some users' comments on the setting in forums and on social media from before the release of the teaser. And after some fun and games, user Davitny212 raises an issue I thought about with Moritz too. What do we do with all the modern technology? Davitny212 specifically mentions trains which could be transformed into aqueducts to deliver water to different buildings. Our bearded friend more or less confirms this, calling it a grand vision for a governor of progress, and it makes a lot of sense. A Roman time city builder without aqueducts would be irresponsibly negligent of one of the Romans' greatest achievements. But the thing I'm wondering now is, Ubisoft Mainz, the German developers, put so much work into the new systems of 1800 like trains, electricity, flying means of transportation, motorized ships and so on, that it almost seems wasteful to go back to a time where all of this wasn't invented yet. So how do we use it? While aqueducts seem like the logical evolution of the train mechanic, especially when you think about them transporting a liquid, there's also the irrigation mechanic of using canals in M-Besa, which also translates into aqueducts quite well. In the end, I don't care as long as it's there. I just love to see all the different mechanics back in some form or another, whether it's workforce, electricity, trains or others. The user Martnap actually called 117 as the year for the new Anno, as he claimed it to have been the territorial zenith of the Roman Empire, which, is actually right. What a coincidence for Ubisoft. Potato Chopsticks 101 mentions triremes, quadriremes, aqueducts, bread and circuses, and Cothons, okay, which is 50% about ships and harbors. Our bearded Roman uses this to essentially tease some products and producers, namely bathhouses, temples, sawmills, workshops, theaters, and his personal favorite, tailors. This is another topic we discussed for a bit, and reflecting on it now, I'm a bit ashamed to admit that I fell into a typical trap for modern day people who look back at older times and think of the people back then as less advanced and therefore simpler? It's just not true. They were, especially only 2000 years ago, just as smart as we were. I'm mentioning this because we tried to translate some of the product chains from 1800 back to those times and thought that it might come down to more natural resource gathering because of the missing technological aspect. But thinking about it now, the product chains in 117 will probably be equally as complex as they got to be in 1800, which I wouldn't be too happy with if it was the case. I mean, it's not difficult to build a long product line, I mean, it's all laid out there, but I think it can get a bit annoying, to be honest. But let's see what they'll make of it. 3 more users talk about how the Roman Empire and the lands beyond would make a great setting, and that colonizing those areas would work well, to which the guy answers that it would be quite a challenge, but that Rome wasn't built in a day. To me, this and another, why not both, directed towards Rome itself and trading routes in the Mediterranean strongly hits at the aforementioned DLC politics, which I'm actually very fine with based on 1800s DLC. The user Gourmet raises the idea of a hint of fantasy, which our bearded fella leaves quite open, though thunder can be heard as he talks about angering the gods. And I know that the Romans, and basically most of the humans back then, were strong believers in many different supernatural forces and deities, but I'd really not want Anno to go down a fantasy path. Yes, absolutely, give your citizens churches and temples and provide scripture and sculptures and have them fear the gods or whatever, but Anno has been relatively realistic and not mystical, and I really just subjectively don't want and don't need that in my personal Anno 117. And last but not least, we have a leak. This very low-res picture allegedly shows a screenshot of an early mock-up version of Anno 117. Now, you guys know how reliable leaks are, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, even though it seems very real to be honest, but what immediately jumped into my face was diagonal roads. If this is a real screenshot, we get diagonal roads. Finally! I love it. No further comments. We see some typical structures for an Anno game, a harbor with a contour and several buildings, including a theater hinting at leisure and culture, and a residence-esque building in the middle, which might have different purposes. There's an aqueduct in the background and, just as importantly, a marshland to the left with footbridges and smaller huts. The last time I remember we had different biomes on one island in the base game was in 1404 with the green and more desert areas of the Orient. I assume that this is an Albion, a colony in Britain, mixing, well, marshlands and forests or fields. Oh boy, it's gonna be an exciting new game, I can tell you that much. And it really doesn't matter if my predictions are right or expectations are met. If Ubisoft Minds manages to reach the same level of quality they did with 1800, this might be another day one purchase for me. I'm looking forward to what you guys have to say about it, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.